The stars were quiet, but danger was hidden in the silence. Captain Daniel Hayes sat alone in the cockpit of his small ship, the Horizon. He was a human mercenary, traveling far from Earth, working jobs that paid enough to keep his ship running. He was not rich, not famous, but his name carried weight in places where danger ruled. On this night, he was drifting through an empty sector when his console lit up with a strange signal. At first, he thought it was just a broken transmission, the kind that echoes through space when ships crash. But when he adjusted his scanners, the message became clear. It was a distress beacon, not ordinary but royal. Attention. This is Princess Lysera of the Veyari Empire. Our vessel is under attack. I request immediate aid. The voice was calm, but behind it was fear. Daniel leaned back in his chair, frowning. The Veyari Empire was powerful. Their fleets were huge, their armies disciplined. If their princess was sending a beacon, something serious had gone wrong. Not my problem, he muttered. He had learned long ago that rushing to help strangers often meant dying early. Yet his eyes stayed on the blinking signal. It was repeating, weaker each cycle, like a heartbeat fading. He sighed. Well, Daniel, when has trouble ever stayed away from you? With a few commands, he set the Horizon on course toward the source. His ship was small but fast, and he knew how to use it like a knife in the dark. The source of the beacon came into view. A massive alien ship, scarred and broken, drifting in space. Around it were smaller vessels, raider ships armed and circling like wolves around a wounded beast. Daniel's sensors told him the truth. The royal cruiser had been crippled, its shields gone and life support running low. The raiders were boarding it. They weren't here to bargain. They wanted a prize, the princess. Daniel's jaw tightened. Raiders never left survivors. He activated his cloaking field, a piece of stolen tech he had modified himself. His ship became a ghost against the stars. Quietly, he slipped past the outer ring of raiders, heading straight for the wounded cruiser. Inside the raider ship, Princess Lysera stood defiant. Chains bound her wrists, but her spirit did not break. Her long silver hair was tangled, and her emerald eyes burned with anger as she glared at her captors. The raider leader, a tall creature with scaled skin and jagged teeth, laughed at her silence. "You will fetch a fine ransom, little starbird," he hissed. "Your father will beg to have you back." Lysera did not answer. She knew her father, the king, would never beg. He would burn the stars before showing weakness. But in her heart, fear grew. No fleet would arrive in time. No soldiers would storm the ship. She was alone, or so she thought. Daniel landed the Horizon in the shadows of the raider vessel, using an old docking channel no one guarded. He moved quickly, wearing light armor and carrying his pulse rifle. Every step echoed in the metal halls. He counted his shots, mapped his escape route, and whispered to himself, "Get in, get her, get out." No hero speeches. The first raider patrol never saw him. A quick shot, a silent strike, and they were down. Daniel dragged the bodies into the shadows and moved on. The deeper he went, the more resistance he met. Alarms began to sound. Shouts filled the air. But Daniel was fast, clever, and brutal. He fought like a cornered wolf, never wasting a move. At last, he reached the holding cell. Through the energy bars, he saw her, the princess. For a moment, Daniel hesitated. She looked nothing like the aliens he had seen before. Her features were graceful, almost human, though her skin shimmered faintly like starlight. Her eyes met his, sharp and questioning. "You're human?" she asked, disbelief in her voice. "Last I checked," Daniel said, lowering his rifle. "I'm here to get you out. Can you walk?" Lysera's lips curved slightly, the first hint of hope she had shown. "Yes." Daniel shot the control panel, and the energy field vanished. She stepped forward, her chains still clinking. Without a word, he pulled out a small tool and cut them loose. "Stay close," he said. "This place is crawling with teeth." The escape was chaos. Raiders swarmed the corridors, shouting in their guttural tongue. Daniel fired in controlled bursts, dropping enemies while pulling Lysera behind cover. She moved with surprising grace, never panicking, always watching. At one point, a raider lunged at her, blade raised. Lysera seized a fallen weapon and struck back, her blow awkward but fierce. The raider fell, and Daniel gave her a sharp nod of respect. They reached the Horizon with alarms screaming. Daniel shoved her inside, sealed the hatch, and raced to the cockpit. "Hold on to something," he said. The ship roared to life, engines burning hot. Raiders scrambled to block their path, but Daniel's hands danced across the controls. The Horizon darted between ships, weaving through fire like a shadow. He fired missiles at the largest raider craft, clearing their way, and then blasted into open space. For the first time in hours, silence returned. Princess Lysera sat in the co-pilot's seat, breathing hard. She looked at Daniel as if seeing something impossible. "You risked your life for me," she said softly. Daniel shrugged. "Wasn't planning on it. Just seemed wrong to leave you there." Her eyes lingered on him, curious and thoughtful. No one in her empire would have taken such a risk alone, yet this human did without promise of reward. "I am Lysera of Veyar," she said, her voice steady again. "Daughter of King Malaran." "You have my thanks, Captain Hayes." Daniel gave a small smile. "Daniel's fine. And you're welcome." As the ship slipped into hyperspace, carrying them toward Veyar Prime, both of them knew this was only the beginning. For Daniel, it was just another job gone wrong. For Lysera, it was the start of something far greater, something that would change the fate of empires. The jump through hyperspace was long, but the silence inside the horizon felt even longer. Daniel sat in the pilot's chair, eyes fixed on the stars streaking past. He was used to being alone. Alone meant safe, alive, and free. But now a princess sat only a few steps away, her presence filling the small cabin with an unfamiliar weight. Princess Lysera of Veyar did not complain. She did not demand comfort or guards. She sat straight, watching him carefully, her green eyes sharp like a blade. Daniel could feel her studying him, though he kept his attention on the controls. "You fly well," she said finally. Daniel smirked faintly. "That's one way to put it. Others call it reckless." "Reckless, perhaps," she admitted, "but effective. You saved me when entire fleets could not." Her words struck him as strange. He had never thought of himself as greater than fleets or soldiers. He was just a man doing what felt right. But to her it was something rare. As the hours passed, she began to speak more. She told him about the ambush. Her ship had been carrying envoys when raiders attacked with surprising coordination. Somehow they knew where to strike, as if someone had given them inside information. That thought troubled her deeply. Daniel listened, saying little. But in his mind a truth formed. Someone inside her empire wanted her gone. That meant his rescue was not the end of trouble, it was only the start. Finally, the ship dropped out of hyperspace. The view of Veyar Prime filled the cockpit window. It was a world of shimmering oceans and towering spires, glowing with golden light. Massive defense platforms circled the planet, their weapons shining like stars. Dozens of ships patrolled the skies, each one larger than Daniel's entire vessel. Lysera's eyes softened at the sight of her home. "We are safe now," she whispered. Daniel wasn't so sure. The moment they entered orbit, the comms crackled. A Veyari commander's voice thundered through. "Unidentified vessel, state your name and purpose." "You are entering royal space," Daniel leaned forward. "This is Captain Daniel Hayes, human mercenary. I'm carrying Princess Lysera. She's alive and unharmed." There was a long silence. Then the voice returned, filled with disbelief. "Repeat." "Did you say Princess Lysera?" Lysera stepped forward, her voice clear. "Yes, Commander. It is I. Prepare for docking. The man beside me is my rescuer." The comms went silent again, then broke into hurried orders. A fleet of escort ships rushed to meet them. Docking was tense. Armed guards swarmed the landing bay, weapons drawn. Daniel stepped out first. Rifle slung at his back, hands raised slightly to show he wasn't looking for trouble. Lysera followed, her royal aura silencing every soldier in the room. "Stand down," she commanded. "This man saved me. Treat him with respect." The guards hesitated, uncertain, but obeyed. Daniel felt their eyes on him, curious, hostile, judging. To them, he was just a strange human who had somehow achieved the impossible. Word of her return spread quickly. By the time they reached the palace gates, crowds had gathered. Nobles, servants, and soldiers filled the great hall, their whispers echoing. Impossible. A human? He brought her back? Outsider filth touching royal blood? Daniel ignored them, keeping his hand close to his sidearm. He had walked into hostile rooms before, but never one so richly decorated with suspicion. Then the hall grew silent. At the far end, seated upon a throne of silver and crystal, was King Malaran of Veyar. His presence filled the chamber like gravity itself. His armor was gilded, his crown gleamed like fire, and his eyes burned with a cold intelligence. Lysera bowed before him, but Daniel simply stood, refusing to kneel. He had never bowed to anyone in his life, and he would not start now. The king's gaze fell on him. "So, this is the human who claims to have saved my daughter?" Daniel opened his mouth, but Lysira spoke first. He does not claim, father, he acted. Without him I would be dead, or I... The palace was alive with whispers and tension the morning after Princess Lysira's return. The corridors of Veyar Prime were crowded with nobles, soldiers, and servants, all eager to hear how a human had rescued their princess when their fleets had failed. Daniel Hayes moved carefully through the halls, his presence still drawing curious and hostile eyes. He was used to strangers judging him, but here it felt different. In this alien court, his every action was weighed and measured. He could feel suspicion in the stares, and it made his hand twitch near his sidearm. Lysira walked beside him, calm and regal. Her emerald eyes softened when they met his, but her lips were set. She was used to the games of her people, but Daniel was different. He didn't play games. He simply acted. The royal council had been summoned, a meeting that would determine the next steps for the kingdom. The throne room, vast and shining with crystal and silver, was packed. At the far end, King Maloran sat, watching them both with an expression that was impossible to read. As Daniel stepped forward, the nobles murmured. Some sneered, some whispered incredulously, and others simply stared, mouths slightly open. The human, who did not belong to their world, had saved their most treasured heir. The king's voice cut through the murmurs. Silence. The court obeyed instantly. Even the murmurs of the nobles used to speaking over each other died. King Maloran's gaze fell on Daniel. You, he said, his voice firm. Come forward. Daniel stepped closer, his posture relaxed but his mind alert. He did not bow. He had learned that some rules were made to protect one's life. Others were meant to remind you of your place. Here, he had no place. You have done something none of my soldiers or admirals could accomplish, the king continued. You risked your life for my daughter. That alone would earn respect in any world. But your actions have implications beyond the battlefield. Daniel frowned. I didn't think beyond saving her, I just acted. King Maloran's eyes narrowed, studying him. A man who acts without thought of reward? Rare indeed, and yet I see that action has value. Great value. The nobles shifted uneasily. Whispers began again. Some of the older ones muttered, Reward? He should be punished. He is an alien. The king raised his hand. Enough. This council is not for your petty arguments. The human is here because he is needed, whether you like it or not. Lysira stepped forward, her voice clear and steady. Father, he saved me. He deserves respect. If he wants nothing, then still. His actions cannot go unacknowledged. Daniel blinked at her. Princess. Quiet human, she said softly, though with authority. Let him speak later. He opened his mouth to protest, but Lysira's eyes stopped him. She trusted the king's judgment, and for now he would follow. The king leaned forward, resting his hands on the throne's armrests. Daniel Hayes, he said, I have considered this carefully. Your bravery is undeniable. Your courage, impressive. And yet you are human. You come from a world far away, unknown, unpredictable. That is a problem for my kingdom. Daniel remained silent, waiting. You will bind yourself to this empire. You will marry my daughter. The word struck Daniel like a bolt of lightning. He blinked. Marry I what? The court gasped. Nobles whispered in shock. Some laughed, thinking the king was joking. Others looked horrified at the thought of a human marrying into the royal family. Lysira froze. Her mind raced. Duty, honor, loyalty, they all demanded obedience. But her heart had been touched by the man who had saved her. Daniel shook his head. I can't, I'm a mercenary. I don't belong to anyone's court. I'm not royalty. King Maloran's eyes were sharp. You belong to no one now, human. But your courage has earned my attention. In this union, you will not just be a husband. You will be a symbol. A symbol that loyalty, bravery, and courage are more important than bloodline alone. Lysira's voice trembled slightly as she spoke. Father, the human saved me. I owe him my life. If you ask this, I will obey, of course. But my feelings are my own. Daniel looked at her, surprise flashing across his face. Your feelings, princess? This isn't a choice. It's a command. She shook her head. Not entirely. You saved me, and that changes things. He didn't reply. He wasn't used to words like that. Words that hinted at respect, gratitude, or even trust. The king's gaze swept over the council. Those who oppose this union speak now. But know this, it will happen. Daniel Hayes will stand beside my daughter. Those who question my decision do so at their own peril. Several nobles whispered furiously. Some even left the room in anger, muttering about the disgrace of the royal family. Others plotted in their minds, wondering how a human could be controlled, or if he could be removed before the union took place. Daniel felt the tension in the room. Danger was here, not from the king, but from those who resented him. He had fought raiders and mercenaries, but politics were another kind of battlefield. Lysera looked at him again, her eyes steady. Daniel, I don't know what will happen, but I do not hate you, he blinked. That's good, I guess. You could run, she said quietly. You could leave, and no one could stop you. But you did not. You stayed, Daniel shrugged. I stay when I think it's right. That's all. Her lips curved slightly, the faintest smile forming. Perhaps that is why I find it acceptable. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Daniel was introduced to the palace staff, nobles, and guards. Some were polite, some hostile. But he handled each with the same calm certainty he had shown in battle. By nightfall, Daniel found himself alone in the garden with Lysera. The alien moon reflected in the fountains, casting silver light across the marble paths. You don't understand, she said softly. In my world, alliances are made for power, for wealth, for politics, yet you acted without thinking of reward. That is unheard of here. Daniel leaned against a fountain, watching the water ripple. I'm not from your world. I don't know your rules. I know one rule, save lives when you can. That's it, Lysera smiled, a small, genuine smile. Perhaps that is why I feel safe with you. Daniel felt a strange warmth, but he said nothing. Words were not always needed. Actions spoke louder. Back in the throne room, the king sat alone, staring at the city below. His most trusted advisors approached cautiously. Your Majesty, are you certain about this? A human, an outsider, standing beside the princess? It will cause unrest, Malaran's eyes gleamed. Perhaps. But it will also show the strength of our kingdom. Not by blood alone, but by courage and honor. Daniel Hayes is more than a human. He is a lesson to all who doubt loyalty and bravery. The advisor bowed. As you wish, my king. Malaran turned back to the window. Tomorrow the council will convene again. We will discuss the union publicly. Let the whispers and doubts rise. It will make the resolution all the stronger. That night Daniel remained in his quarters thinking. He had never imagined being part of such a world. Never imagined that saving one person could lead to something so immense. But deep inside he understood that this was no longer just about him. This was about the princess, about the kingdom, and about something larger than either of them. Lysera, too, could not sleep. She walked along the balcony, staring at the stars. A human had risked everything for her, and now the king demanded a bond that went far beyond gratitude. She did not know what the future held, but for the first time, she felt a spark of hope. A strange, quiet hope that perhaps the human by her side could become more than a savior. And somewhere, in the quiet of the night, the galaxy seemed to wait, watching what would happen next. The morning light streamed through the palace's tall windows, casting golden stripes across the marble floors. In the halls of Vaer Prime, whispers followed Daniel Hayes everywhere he went. Some nobles bowed respectfully, others glared, and a few muttered curses under their breath. To them, a human walking freely among royalty was nothing short of scandal. Daniel ignored them all. He had never needed approval to survive, and he would not start now. His focus was on the princess and the subtle tension surrounding the king's command. Lysera walked beside him, her posture regal and composed, though her eyes betrayed concern. You must be careful, she said quietly. Not everyone welcomes you here. Some would rather see you gone. Daniel raised an eyebrow. I've survived worse than whispers, princess. But thanks for the warning. Her lips curved into a faint smile. I didn't warn for your sake alone. I care what happens to you. He looked at her, a small flicker of surprise in his chest. Humans rarely cared about strangers so quickly, but he had seen the same concern in her eyes that he had seen in allies during firefights. It was genuine. The palace council convened in the morning. High-ranking nobles gathered around a massive crystal table, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and fury. Some whispered openly about Daniel's unsuitable presence beside the princess. Others schemed in silence, plotting ways to remove him. King Malaran entered the chamber, and the room fell silent instantly. His gaze swept the council, finally resting on Daniel, who stood tall beside Lysera. Today, the king said, his voice firm. "We discuss the future of the princess. Daniel Hayes has saved her life. Now his place beside her must be acknowledged. Some may protest. Let them speak first." A sharp, commanding voice broke the silence. A noblewoman, tall and haughty, stood. "Your Majesty, with all due respect, this human, he is an outsider. He cannot understand our customs, our bloodlines, our history." The palace was alive with energy. Today marked the official announcement of Daniel Hayes' union with Princess Lysera. The coronation hall gleamed under crystal chandeliers, its walls lined with banners of the Veyari Empire. Nobles and diplomats from across the galaxy had gathered to witness what should have been a proud and joyful ceremony. But beneath the elegance, danger waited. Whispers of betrayal had grown louder. Lord Varric, furious that Daniel had earned favor, had secretly rallied a faction of nobles and mercenaries. Their plan: disrupt the ceremony, remove the human, and destabilize the kingdom. Daniel moved quietly through the hall, his eyes scanning the crowd. He was dressed formally as requested, but his hand never strayed far from the hidden sidearm beneath his cloak. Every whisper, every glance told him that some were watching, not with admiration but with intent to harm. Lysera walked beside him, her arm brushing against his. Her eyes were steady, yet her fingers tightened slightly as they approached the throne. She trusted him. She had to. "You ready for this?" she whispered. Daniel glanced at her. "As ready as I'll ever be. Stay close." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Always." The ceremony began with music, chants, and formal speeches. The nobles recited their oaths, pledging loyalty to the princess and her chosen protector. Daniel remained quiet, observing. He noted the subtle movements, a noble's hand hovering near a concealed weapon, a guard's hesitant glance, and the shadow slipping along the far wall. It was Lord Varric. He was waiting for the exact moment to strike. As the king raised his hand to declare the union, chaos erupted. A loud explosion shook the hall. Crystal chandeliers swung dangerously and the crowd screamed in panic. Smoke filled the room. Varric's men stormed the floor, armed and merciless. Their aim was clear: capture Lysera and eliminate Daniel. Daniel reacted instantly. He drew his weapon, moving with precision and skill. One sweep of his arm, one burst of fire, and a group of attackers fell before they could reach the princess. Lysera did not panic. She had learned from Daniel in the past weeks. She grabbed a ceremonial staff, using it to block strikes and push back attackers. Her movements were agile, disciplined, and effective. The royal guards rallied, but Varric's forces were organized and deadly. The hall became a battlefield of crystal, steel, and fire. Daniel moved through the chaos, his focus on Lysera and the king. He pushed enemies back, covering the princess as she moved toward the throne. "Stay with me," he shouted. "Keep moving," Lysera nodded, keeping close. Together they fought as a team, blending courage with instinct. Daniel's human ingenuity, simple but unpredictable, kept their enemies off balance. Guards watched, some inspired, some shocked. A human was saving the royal bloodline with strategies they had never imagined. Lord Varric, realizing his initial plan was failing, stepped forward. He was armored and armed, a figure of authority and menace. His eyes burned with fury as he saw Daniel standing between him and the princess. "You, outsider, you think you can protect her?" Varric roared. "This throne is mine." Daniel met his gaze. "Not today. Not ever." The two clashed, steel ringing against energy weapons. Daniel dodged, struck, and countered with speed and precision. Varric's rage made him predictable. Daniel's calm mind made him unstoppable. Lysera watched, her hands ready, her eyes never leaving Daniel. She realized then what the court had only begun to see. The human was not only brave, he was extraordinary. Elsewhere in the hall, nobles who had plotted silently began to falter. Some were captured by loyal guards. Others fled, realizing their plan had failed. The chaos became a turning point. The people of Veyr saw the human's bravery, not as an outsider's accident, but as proof of courage and honor. Daniel finally disarmed Varric with a clever maneuver, forcing him to the ground. He held him at gunpoint, looking around the hall at all who had witnessed the fight. "Leave now or you'll regret it." Varric's pride faltered. He saw that the human was not just a mercenary, he was a protector, unmatched in skill and resolve. With a final glare, Varric disappeared into the shadows, defeated but not yet gone. With the attackers subdued, the hall slowly cleared. Smoke dissipated, and the king's voice echoed through the chamber. "Let this day be remembered," he said, his gaze moving between Daniel and Lysera, "not for the treachery of a few, but for the courage of those who protect this kingdom. Daniel Hayes, you have proven yourself worthy, not by blood, but by honor and bravery." The applause that followed was thunderous. Nobles, soldiers, and citizens cheered. The human had not only survived, they had triumphed. Lysera's eyes shone as she approached Daniel. She placed a hand on his arm, smiling despite the chaos. "You did it. You saved everything." Daniel shook his head, tired but steady. "We did it together." The king stepped forward, his presence commanding silence once more. "This union will proceed. Daniel Hayes, you are no longer merely a protector. You are a partner, a symbol, and a defender of Veyar. Your bond with my daughter is not just a reward. It is a promise of strength and unity." Daniel looked at Lysera. Her green eyes met his, filled with trust, respect, and something more. Something he had not expected but could not ignore. "I understand, Your Majesty," Daniel said finally. "I will stand by her side." The king's expression softened. "Good. Let it be known across the empire, courage, loyalty, and honor are valued above all, and let the galaxy see that a human can embody all three." As night fell over Veyar Prime, the palace was quiet once again. The ceremony had been saved, the traitors exposed, and the union affirmed. But Daniel knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers, and there would always be those who underestimated humans. Lysera walked beside him on the palace balcony, the cool wind brushing their faces. "You didn't have to fight for me," she said softly. Daniel smiled faintly. "I didn't fight for you. I fought because it was right. And because I couldn't let anyone hurt you, not while I could stop them." Her hand brushed his. "And I trust you more than anyone I've ever known." For the first time, Daniel allowed himself to feel the weight of the moment. Protecting a princess had been a job, but now standing beside her in victory, it became something more: responsibility, honor, and perhaps even something like belonging. From the shadows, Lord Varric watched the palace lights, his fury simmering. He had failed, but the human would not remain unchallenged forever. The king may have praised him today, but Varric had patience and plans that would test even Daniel's cunning and courage. But for now, Daniel and Lysera had won. Together they had faced betrayal, danger, and death, and had survived. The bond between them had strengthened, forged in fire and bloodless combat, and it would only grow stronger in the days to come. As the moonlight reflected off the palace towers, Daniel looked out across the city, the stars shining beyond. The human who had arrived as a stranger now had a place in this world, a purpose beyond survival, and a promise to the princess who had trusted him with her life. The galaxy was watching, and for the first time it saw that humans were not just survivors, they were heroes. The morning sun bathed the palace in gold. Today was no ordinary day. It was the day of the official union between Daniel Hayes and Princess Lysera. The entire Veyari Empire had been informed. Messages of congratulations and curiosity flooded the courts of neighboring planets. Some hailed it as a new era of unity. Others doubted the wisdom of a human standing beside the princess. Daniel, dressed in formal attire but still carrying the calm confidence that had become his trademark, walked through the palace corridors. He felt every pair of eyes on him, some judging, others curious, and a few filled with awe. He did not flinch. He had survived worse than judgment. Lysera approached him, her gown flowing gracefully behind her. She looked regal, yet there was warmth in her smile, a smile that had grown for him over weeks of shared danger, trust, and understanding. "Ready?" she asked softly. Daniel nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." Her hand brushed against his arm. "Then let's face the day together." The throne room had been transformed into a grand ceremonial hall. Crystal chandeliers hung from above, reflecting light across banners that depicted the history of the Veyari Empire. Nobles, diplomats, and citizens had gathered, their eyes fixed on the central stage. Soldiers stood at attention, a silent testament to the kingdom's strength. King Malaran sat proudly upon his throne. His expression was serious, but pride gleamed in his eyes as he watched Daniel and Lysera enter. The court fell silent as the couple approached. Daniel Hayes, the king began, his voice commanding but calm. You have proven yourself beyond measure, not by your blood but by your courage, loyalty, and honor. Today you are no longer merely a protector. You are a partner, a symbol, and a defender of this empire. Daniel bowed slightly, a gesture of respect rather than submission. I understand, Your Majesty. I will stand by her side always. Lysera stepped forward, her hand reaching for his. And I will stand with him. The king nodded, signaling the ceremony to begin. The words of the union were simple yet powerful. The vow spoke of protection, respect, and trust. Daniel's voice was steady, unwavering, while Lysera's echoed across the hall with grace and certainty. I promise to protect you, Princess, Daniel said. I promise to stand by your side through every danger and every challenge. I promise to trust you, Daniel, Lacey replied. To face the future with